The relentless drizzle of a typical Seattle evening outside the heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter did little to disturb the quiet hum within. Past the brightly painted, albeit slightly chipped, sign, Alara Vance was a lone silhouette in the small, cluttered office, bathed in the soft glow of a desk lamp. The rhythmic clicking of her keyboard was her primary accompaniment, punctuated only by the occasional soft meow from the cat kennels down the hall or the deep, contented sigh of a dreaming dog from the canine enclosures. This was her world, a universe defined by the soft fur and vulnerable hearts she tirelessly protected. Her dinner, a sad, steaming plastic tray of frozen lasagna, sat half-eaten on a stack of adoption applications. The cheese, once bubbly, had congealed into an unappetizing yellow sheet. She ate mechanically, her gaze fixed on the glowing monitor, where spreadsheets detailing food inventories and veterinary bills scrolled endlessly. The silence was her chosen companion, allowing her thoughts to drift, not to the mundane anxieties of human life, but to the silent communications of the animals around her. There was no casual banter here, no shared laughter over a takeout meal, just the quiet dedication of a woman who had found her purpose in the selfless act of caring. The subtle scent of antiseptic, damp fur, and pine-scented cleaner was the perfume of her existence, a testament to the endless cycle of cleaning, feeding, and nurturing that consumed her days, and often, her nights. Her shoulders, perpetually hunched, spoke of the immense weight she carried, the responsibility for every single creature under her roof. Her eyes, though tired, held a deep, unwavering compassion, a quiet ferocity. Alara had found her sanctuary here at Heartfelt Haven, tucked away in the suburban sprawl just north of Seattle. A haven indeed from a world that often felt too loud, too demanding, too full of human complications. The shelter was her family, its inhabitants her children, each with a story, each deserving of a second chance. She wasn't just an animal care attendant. She was a quiet guardian, a diligent advocate, and a tireless laborer. She was the first to arrive and often the last to leave, long after the last volunteer had bid their weary goodbyes. The animals felt it, the profound sense of security her presence brought. Among the shelter's myriad residents, one particular feline held a unique, almost sacred place in Alara's solitary heart, Midnight, an elderly, scruffy black cat. Midnight was the shelter's longest-term resident, a testament to his extreme shyness and profound mistrust of humans. He was a shadow, darting away from approaching footsteps, hissing at outstretched hands, a ghost of a cat haunted by an unknown past. No one, not even the most seasoned volunteers, had ever managed to truly touch him. No one, save for Alara. Midnight, for reasons unknown even to her, had chosen Alara as his confidant. He would often materialize silently in her office during her late-night shifts, a dark, graceful silhouette, and leap onto her lap, curling into a warm, purring ball as she worked. It was a rare, precious display of trust, a quiet communion that spoke volumes about Alara's inherent goodness and Midnight's profound instinct. One particularly fierce November night, the Pacific Northwest unleashed a storm of biblical proportions. Rain lashed against the shelter's corrugated metal roof with the force of 1,000 drums, and the wind howled through the eaves like a banshee. Suddenly, with a deafening crack that shook the entire building, the lights flickered and died, plunging the shelter into a profound, terrifying darkness. The generator, usually reliable, sputtered once, then fell silent. Simultaneously, a sickening crunch echoed from above a section of the old roof, weakened by years of wear and battered by the relentless wind, had finally given way. Cold rain began to pour into the main dog kennel, mingling with splintered wood and torn insulation. Chaos erupted. The dogs, already agitated by the storm, began to bark frantically, a chorus of terrified howls. Cats in their separate enclosure shrieked, their eyes glowing like startled embers in the darkness, their fear a palpable entity. Panic, raw and primal, spread through the animals. Alara felt her own heart hammering against her ribs, a primal fear momentarily seizing her. But then, a deeper instinct, a protective fury, took over. She grabbed her heavy-duty flashlight from her desk drawer, its beam cutting a shaky path through the inky blackness. She could smell the damp earth, the fear-tinged fur, the sharp tang of ozone from the damaged electrical wiring. She knew the shelter's layout intimately. Every twist and turn, every cage. This was her home. These were her charges. "It's okay, babies," she murmured, her voice a low, steadying hum. "Mama's here. We'll be okay." She moved with an almost superhuman calm, navigating the darkened corridors, ignoring the splintered wood and cascading water. She went to the dog kennels first, speaking to each dog by name, her voice a soothing balm against their terror. She opened the gates, gently guiding the largest, most frightened dogs to the drier, more secure central office, then returning for the smaller ones. She scooped up trembling chihuahuas and coaxed reluctant pit bulls, her hands sure and steady, the wet fur, the frantic panting, the occasional nips of fear. None of it deterred her. She worked tirelessly, a solitary warrior against the storm's devastation. Then she moved to the cat enclosure. The felines were even more distressed, some frozen in terror, others frantically clawing at their cages. Alara knew she had to get them to the office, too, the only truly dry and secure spot left. She unlatched each cage, one by one, speaking softly, offering a comforting hand, scooping up resistant felines. She felt tiny claws dig into her arm, heard the sharp, frightened hisses, but she didn't flinch. When she reached Midnight's cage, the old cat was huddled in the farthest corner, his black fur practically invisible in the darkness, his eyes twin pinpricks of pure terror reflecting her flashlight beam. He was trembling violently, a low, guttural growl rumbling in his chest. Most people would have left him, knowing his extreme aversion to touch. But Alara knelt, extending her hand slowly, whispering his name, her voice a soothing caress. "It's okay, old man, Mama's got you. We're going somewhere safe." Slowly, tentatively. Midnight uncurled. He crept forward, his eyes still wide, but he rubbed his head against her outstretched fingers, a faint, almost imperceptible purr rumbling to life. Alara gently scooped him up, cradling him against her chest. She held him close, shielding him from the overwhelming noise of the storm and the intermittent flashes of lightning, his frail body a warm comfort against her own. She carried him and other smaller animals in improvised carriers, making trip after trip, her exhaustion growing with each journey. By the time the first faint light of dawn broke through the raging clouds, every animal was safe, huddled together in the dry, crowded office, their terrified cries replaced by soft purrs and weary snores. Ilara, soaked to the bone, shivering from the cold, and utterly exhausted, finally sank onto her desk chair, Midnight immediately leaping into her lap, purring like a tiny engine. Her hands, scraped and bruised, shook slightly, but her eyes held a quiet triumph. It was a small act, this rescue, born of necessity and pure compassion, but it was a testament to her profound capacity for selfless love and her unflappable courage in the face of chaos. It was her save the cat moment, ensuring that any audience would unequivocally root for her. As the sun fully rose, casting a pale, watery light through the office window, Ilara found herself observing Midnight, who was now peacefully asleep on her lap. She often wondered about the complex inner lives of these animals, the hidden stories behind their scars, their fears, their unshakable loyalties. She had a strange, almost intuitive connection to them, a profound ability to sense their emotions and understand their silent cues that others often missed. When a newly arrived dog cowered in a corner, she could almost feel the phantom blows, the echoes of past abuse. When a cat refused food, she could sense not just hunger, but a deep, pervasive grief. This unique intuition, she believed, stemmed from her own fragmented, painful past, When she was a little girl, living in a small, isolated town in rural Oregon, she had a beloved pet rabbit, Snowball, a fluffy white creature she adored. One day, Snowball vanished without a trace, leaving Alara heartbroken and confused. Her parents had dismissed it as a simple runaway, but Alara had always felt a chilling sense of something more sinister, a pervasive wrongness that settled deep in her young heart. Later, a beloved family dog, a golden retriever named Rusty, had also disappeared, under equally mysterious circumstances. The lack of explanation, the dismissive shrugs of the adults, had left an indelible mark on her psyche, planting a seed of fear and a burning desire to protect the innocent and vulnerable from unseen threats. It was why she was so drawn to animals, particularly those who bore the scars of past trauma. She understood their silent suffering, for a part of her carried it too. She often jotted down her observations, her insights, in a small, tattered notebook she kept hidden beneath her stack of shelter reports. These weren't formal records, but personal musings, cryptic notes about certain animals' unusual behaviors, their unexplained anxieties, their specific triggers. She sometimes drew diagrams of their movements, almost like mapping invisible trauma pathways. It was her secret language, her way of understanding the whispers of whiskers and the unspoken cries of the voiceless. Colleagues, if they ever saw it, would likely dismiss it as the ramblings of an overly empathetic, perhaps slightly eccentric, animal lover. They didn't realize these scribbles were the embryonic forms of her unique talent, a talent that would soon be called upon to unmask a monster hiding in plain sight. Her obsession with protecting animals wasn't just a job. It was a deeply personal crusade, driven by the lingering pain of her own past, a past that had taught her to listen to the silent screams of those who could not speak for themselves. The storm had passed, leaving behind a crisp, clean scent of rain and damp earth, but a new kind of chill settled over Heartfelt Haven. It arrived not with wind or thunder, but with the sleek, polished Mercedes-Benz that purred to a stop in the shelter's modest gravel parking lot one Tuesday morning. Stepping out was Eleanor Caldwell, a figure straight from the glossy pages of a high society magazine. Her tailored silk suit, a vibrant emerald green that seemed almost garish against the shelter's muted tones, shimmered under the pale Seattle sun. Diamonds glittered at her ears and throat, catching the light like tiny, cold stars. She moved with an almost regal air, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair never seeming to stir even in the gentle breeze. Eleanor Caldwell was a name synonymous with power, wealth, and philanthropic endeavors in Seattle's elite circles, particularly within the animal welfare community. She wasn't just a donor, she was the donor. The kind of donor whose name graced plaques, whose presence commanded attention. Whispers had circulated for weeks about her impending visit, a vague promise of a significant contribution. Now, here she was, her arrival a seismic event in the quiet, humble world of Heartfelt Haven. Her smile, wide and dazzling, was a carefully constructed facade, revealing perfectly white, almost too perfect, teeth, yet, beneath the veneer of charm and generosity, a sharp, calculating intelligence flickered in her cold blue eyes. The reader, privy to her inner thoughts, could already sense the profound disconnect. She didn't care for the animals themselves. To Eleanor, these creatures were mere commodities, tools for public relations, props in her meticulously crafted image as a benevolent animal advocate. Her donations were strategic investments, designed to enhance her social standing and expand her influence, not to genuinely alleviate suffering. She saw the shelter not as a haven for the vulnerable, but as a stepping stone to greater power. Another jewel in her meticulously polished crown, Alara watched her approach from the main entrance, a prickle of immediate unease crawling up her spine. Most of the shelter staff and volunteers, initially awestruck by Eleanor's aura of wealth and prestige, rushed forward with excited murmurs and deferential greetings. Eleanor accepted their fawning with practiced grace, a queen among her subjects. But Alara felt no such admiration. Her instinct, that peculiar, almost visceral intuition that hummed beneath her skin whenever animals were involved, screamed a silent warning. "Welcome, Ms. Caldwell." "What an honor," chirped Brenda, the shelter's perky, perpetually optimistic receptionist, practically bowing. Eleanor offered a perfectly modulated laugh. "Please, call me Eleanor, and the honor is all mine. This heartfelt haven is simply charming. So much potential." Her gaze swept across the well-worn kennels, a faint, almost imperceptible curl of her lip betraying a hint of disdain. It was clear she saw not the love within, but the imperfections, the opportunities for her own grand designs. She then made her announcement, her voice resonating with theatrical sincerity. "I am absolutely delighted to announce my intention to pledge $5 million to Heartfelt Haven to fund the construction of a brand new, state-of-the-art wing." A collective gasp of astonishment and joy rippled through the staff. $5 million. It was an unimaginable sum, a lifeline that could transform the struggling shelter. "This new wing," Eleanor continued, her voice swelling with manufactured emotion, "will allow us to save even more precious lives, to provide them with the comfort and care they so desperately deserve." The announcement, a moment of profound triumph for the shelter, simultaneously sent a jolt of profound disorientation through Ilara. $5 million. It was a dream come true for the animals, a future she had only dared to imagine. Yet, her gut churned with a nauseating unease. This sudden, overwhelming generosity felt wrong, too grand, too public, too perfectly choreographed. It threatened the quiet, self-sufficient rhythm of the shelter, the intimate connection she shared with the animals in the space. This place, her sanctuary, her family, felt suddenly vulnerable, exposed to an invasive alien force. And then there was Midnight. The old black cat, usually a master of stealth, had emerged from the shadows of Ilara's office, drawn by the unusual commotion. He sat stiffly by Ilara's feet, his ears flattened against his head, his tail twitching erratically. As Eleanor Caldwell swept past them, her expensive perfume a cloying cloud, Midnight's reaction was instantaneous and violent. He let out a low, guttural hiss, a sound of pure, unadulterated primal hatred. His fur bristled, his back arched, and his eyes, usually wide and trusting only with Ilara, narrowed into luminous slits of green fury, fixed with an unnerving intensity on Eleanor Caldwell. He hissed again, a spitting, venomous sound that cut through the joyful murmurs, a stark, dissonant chord in the celebratory atmosphere. Eleanor, momentarily startled, stopped dead in her tracks, her practiced smile faltering. Her eyes, usually so composed, flashed with a flicker of annoyance. Quickly masked, she merely chuckled, a brittle, dismissive sound. "Oh my, such a feisty little creature. Isn't he clearly? Some of your animals need a bit more socialization." Her gaze, for a fleeting moment, met Ilara's, and in that brief exchange, Ilara felt a chill deeper than the Seattle rain. It was a look of cold, calculating disdain, a flicker of something truly unpleasant hidden behind the benevolent mask. Ilara felt an immediate, fierce surge of protectiveness for Midnight, for all the vulnerable creatures in her care. Her heart pounded, a chaotic drum against her ribs. She felt a profound sense of foreboding, a certainty that this grand gesture was not what it seemed. The sheer generosity was a blessing. Yes, but it came with an invisible, unsettling cost. She felt a powerful internal conflict, the logical part of her brain, the one that understood the shelter's dire financial needs, screamed at her to be grateful, to welcome this windfall. But her instinct, honed by years of silent communication with traumatized animals, shrieked a warning. It was the familiar pull between pragmatic necessity and an indefinable, yet potent, dread. This encounter, and Midnight's unprecedented reaction, solidified her resolve, the deep-seated anxiety, The vague unease she had always carried about the fate of lost and suffering animals now coalesced into a sharp, focused determination. This was no longer just about survival for Heartfelt Haven. It was about protecting its very soul, its true purpose. This woman, with her silk and diamonds and false smiles, felt like a serpent in their garden, promising paradise while harboring poison. Ilara knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she could not, would not, allow Eleanor Caldwell to harm the animals she loved, not under her watch. This was her point of no return. Her quiet, withdrawn life of selfless service would now have to become something more, something proactive, something fiercely protective. The tension continued to mount throughout the day. Eleanor Caldwell, after her grand announcement, didn't leave. Instead, she embarked on a detailed tour of the shelter, her questions sharp and probing, her comments often laced with subtle criticism. She scrutinized the adoption records, the veterinary care protocols, even the volunteers' work schedules. Her presence felt invasive, a disruption of the shelter's organic rhythm. Later that afternoon, in a meeting with Ilara and Brenda, Eleanor outlined her vision for the new wing and, more unsettlingly, for the shelter's future. "We need to streamline operations," she declared, her voice crisp and authoritative. "More efficient adoption processes, faster turnover. We can't afford to keep animals indefinitely, especially the difficult ones." Her gaze, as she spoke, flickered towards the cat enclosure, where Midnight was still a dark, wary presence. Ilara felt a cold knot in her stomach. "And we need a robust media campaign. We'll host a grand adoption gala, a high-profile event to showcase our most adoptable animals. We want to attract discerning pet owners, those who appreciate a quality animal." Ilara listened, her heart sinking with each word. Adoptable animals, quality animal. The language was cold, transactional. It stripped the animals of their individuality, their unique needs, reducing them to marketable commodities. And the implication about difficult ones was chilling. It was clear Eleanor meant the older animals, the shy ones, the ones with medical issues, precisely the animals Ilara fought hardest to protect. "We also need to implement stricter criteria for intake," Eleanor continued, seemingly oblivious to Ilara's growing distress. "No more strays without a clear medical history. We need to focus on animals from reputable breeders or previous owners who can provide full documentation. We can't risk bringing in unknown diseases or behavioral problems that might deter potential adopters." This was a direct assault on Heartfelt Haven's core mission. They were a shelter for all animals in need, a sanctuary for the forgotten, the abandoned, the abused. Eleanor's vision would turn it into a selective showroom, prioritizing aesthetics and quick adoptions over genuine welfare. Ilara felt a silent fury brewing within her. "Ms. Caldwell," Ilara interjected, her voice quieter than usual, but firm. "Our mission is to provide a safe haven for all animals. Many of our most beloved residents are strays, or come from difficult backgrounds. Their stories are often the most compelling, and they are the ones who need us most." Eleanor's dazzling smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. "Of course, Ilara, and your dedication is commendable. However, we must be pragmatic. We are running a business, a charity. Yes, but a business nonetheless. Efficiency, optics. Those are paramount for attracting continued funding. And frankly, some animals simply aren't appealing to the general public. We need to focus on our strengths." She paused, her gaze lingering on Ilara. "Perhaps you're a little too emotionally invested, dear. Sometimes, one needs to make difficult decisions for the greater good of the organization." Ilara felt a cold dread settle deep in her gut. Eleanor's words were a direct challenge, a subtle but unmistakable threat. She was being told to conform, to sacrifice her principles for the sake of the greater good, Eleanor's greater good, which clearly prioritized appearance and profit over the animal's true welfare. The implication was clear: conform, or be replaced. Later that night, Alara sat alone in her office, Midnight curled on her lap, purring softly. She replayed the day's events in her mind, the casual cruelty in Eleanor's voice, the dismissal of their core values. She thought of Midnight's violent, instinctive reaction to Eleanor, a raw, unfiltered expression of fear and revulsion. Midnight, who trusted no one, had recognized a predator. And Alara, whose own intuition was a mirror to the animal's silent fears, had felt it too. She pulled out her battered notebook, its pages filled with her cryptic observations. She stared at a page where she had sketched Midnight's behavior over the years, noting his triggers, his subtle cues of comfort and distress. She added a new entry, a stark, definitive one. Midnight's reaction to Caldwell extreme fear and aggression. Unprecedented, deeply disturbed. She underlined deeply disturbed several times. This was no longer just about a new wing or a media campaign. This was about defending Heartfelt Haven, defending the animals, defending everything she believed in, against a force that threatened to corrupt it from within. Eleanor Caldwell wasn't just a generous donor. She was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And Alara, with only her intuition and the silent whispers of the animals, was the only one who truly saw it. The battle for Heartfelt Haven, and for the very souls of the animals within it, had just begun. Alara knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that her quiet, withdrawn life of selfless service would now have to become something more, something proactive, something fiercely protective. She could not, would not, back down. Not for Midnight, not for any of them. The weeks following Eleanor Caldwell's grand announcement were a slow, insidious siege on Heartfelt Haven. Her initial $5 million pledge, a sum that had initially brought tears of joy to the eyes of most staff, now felt less like a blessing and more like a gilded cage. Construction began on the new wing, a noisy, disruptive presence that sent tremors through the shelter, unsettling the already sensitive animals. Eleanor, with her perfectly manicured nails and an unnervingly bright smile, was a constant, unwelcome presence, seemingly overseeing every detail, her piercing blue eyes missing nothing. Her influence seeped into every corner of the shelter's operations. Subtly, then overtly, she began to implement her streamlining initiatives, starting with the adoption process. No longer were potential adopters subjected to the rigorous, sometimes months-long, vetting period that Alara had championed. Home visits, background checks, interviews with veterinarians. Now, Eleanor pushed for fast-track adoptions, particularly for the most desirable animals, the young, the healthy, the aesthetically pleasing. Alara's intuition screamed. She saw how these rushed adoptions often led to immediate returns, animals overwhelmed or neglected by unprepared owners. But Eleanor, seated at the head of every staff meeting, dismissed Alara's concerns as overly cautious and inefficient. The animals, in their silent way, felt the shift. The once comforting routine of the shelter was subtly altered. Some animals, particularly those with a history of trauma, grew more withdrawn, their anxiety palpable to Alara. Others, like Midnight, became overtly agitated whenever Eleanor was near. The old black cat, a creature of habit and deep-seated mistrust, seemed to sense Eleanor's presence even before she entered a room. His low growl a constant, unsettling counterpoint to her saccharine pronouncements. Alara's own internal conflict intensified. On one hand, the new wing promised space, resources, and the potential to save more lives. On the other hand, the cost felt immeasurable, the erosion of their core values, the commodification of sentient beings, and the increasingly chilling sense that Eleanor Caldwell was not merely an overbearing benefactor, but something far more sinister. Alara confided her growing unease only in her tattered notebook, her observations becoming more detailed, more urgent, sketching Midnight's frantic movements, the worried eyes of a newly adopted dog that looked too quickly taken. The breaking point arrived with Eleanor's announcement of the Grand Adoption Gala, a high-profile media event designed to showcase the shelter's successes and attract further celebrity donors. It was to be a lavish affair, complete with a red carpet and local news coverage, held right within the shelter's newly renovated main hall. Eleanor saw it as a crowning achievement. Ilara saw it as a grotesque spectacle, a parade of vulnerable creatures for public consumption. On the day of the gala, the shelter, usually a sanctuary of quiet care, was transformed. Balloons bobbed, banners proclaimed a new era for Heartfelt Haven, and a temporary stage was erected, draped in velvet. The air was thick with the scent of expensive catering and cloying perfumes. Ilara, dressed in her modest pressed uniform, felt utterly out of place amidst the glittering attendees. She watched, a silent sentinel, as families arrived, often drawn by the promise of quickly obtaining a purebred animal, rather than the commitment to genuine rescue. Eleanor Caldwell, resplendent in a shimmering gown, moved through the crowd, a dazzling smile plastered on her face, accepting accolades and basking in the adoration. The formal presentation began. Eleanor strode onto the stage, bathed in the glow of spotlights, a microphone in hand. She began her practiced speech, a litany of statistics and glowing self-praise about her contributions and her vision for the shelter. The audience, a mix of local dignitaries, wealthy donors, and eager potential adopters, listened attentively, many nodding in approval. Ilara stood at the back, near the entrance to the cat room, a sense of quiet dread building within her. Midnight, sensing the cacophony and Eleanor's nearby presence, had found refuge behind Ilara's legs, a dark, trembling shadow. He was agitated, his tail lashing, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Ilara gently stroked his fur, trying to soothe him, but his terror was palpable. Then, as Eleanor reached the crescendo of her speech, praising the shelter's successful, rapid turnover of animals, a sharp, piercing hiss erupted from behind Ilara. Midnight, defying his usual reclusiveness and Ilara's calming touch, launched himself forward. He shot out from behind Ilara, a black blur, directly towards the stage. He didn't make it onto the stage, but he stopped just feet from it, his back arched high, his fur bristling, his fangs bared in a silent, furious snarl. He began to hiss, a loud, guttural, continuous sound that cut through Eleanor's perfectly modulated voice, echoing ominously through the suddenly hushed hall. He swiped his claws wildly at the air, his eyes fixed on Eleanor with an unnerving, primal hatred. The spectacle was shocking. Eleanor's speech faltered, her flawless smile freezing on her face. The audience gasped, some recoiling in alarm. A few chuckled nervously, but most simply stared, bewildered by the old cat's violent, unprovoked display. This was no mere feisty animal. This was a creature consumed by a deep, ancient fear and loathing. Ilara, mortified by the disruption, but instantly understanding the profound significance of Midnight's reaction, felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment. She rushed forward, gently scooping up the still hissing Midnight into her arms. She held him close, whispering soothing words, stroking his agitated fur, and as she spoke, something miraculous, yet deeply unsettling to the onlookers, occurred. Midnight, despite the chaotic environment and his intense fear, gradually began to calm down in her arms. His purr, initially a furious rumble, softened into a low, shaky vibrato. Yet, even as he relaxed against Ilara, his luminous green eyes remained fixed on Eleanor Caldwell, blazing with an undimmed, visceral aversion. It was as if he was trying to communicate something, to warn them. This wasn't an act. This wasn't Ilara controlling the cat. This was a profound, almost telepathic bond, a silent conversation only they understood. It was Ilara's talent, her unique intuition, brought to the forefront under duress. She didn't consciously show off her ability. She was forced to use it to soothe Midnight and control the escalating situation. Among the stunned faces in the crowd, one man watched the entire exchange with an unusually keen interest. Noah Vance, a seasoned investigative journalist specializing in animal welfare and environmental issues, had been invited to cover the gala for the Seattle Sentinel. He had expected a dull, predictable affair of self-congratulation. What he witnessed was an extraordinary, inexplicable display. He saw the genuine, raw fear in Midnight's eyes, the profound trust the cat placed in Alara, and the almost supernatural calm Alara exuded as she quelled the animal's distress. He also saw the fleeting flash of unadulterated fury in Eleanor Caldwell's eyes before she regained her composure. Noah, a man who built his career on uncovering hidden truths, felt a prickle of professional curiosity. There was a story here, far deeper than a mere fundraising gala. He was the helper, the one who would eventually lend his resources to Alara's cause. Eleanor Caldwell, her face stiff with barely suppressed rage, quickly recovered her composure, though a tremor was evident in her voice. "My apologies, ladies and gentlemen," she forced out, her smile now brittle. "As you can see, some of our more challenging residents are still adjusting to their new surroundings. Perhaps this particular feline needs a bit more solitude." Her gaze, as she spoke, burned into Alara's, cold and menacing. "Alara, if you would be so kind as to remove that creature, and perhaps we need to discuss a more permanent solution for animals like him. Animals who clearly cannot be integrated into a healthy shelter environment. Perhaps a more humane end for their own sake." The implication was chilling, delivered with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She was suggesting euthanasia, a final solution for animals she deemed unadoptable. Her words were a clear demonstration of her cruelty, her disregard for animal life beyond its cosmetic value. This moment solidified the clear opposition between them. Alara, the protector of all life, especially the vulnerable, and Eleanor, the manipulator, who saw life as expendable if it didn't serve her agenda. After the gala, Eleanor's subtle pressure escalated into outright control. She began to issue directives, bypassing Alara and going directly to other staff members. She demanded detailed reports on difficult animals, scrutinizing their health and behavior logs with an almost predatory interest. She insisted on a priority list for adoptions, pushing animals Alara knew were not ready, or whose prospective owners had not been properly vetted. Alara's access to new intake animals was subtly restricted, and she found herself increasingly marginalized within her own sanctuary. One afternoon, Eleanor summoned Alara to her newly appointed, opulent office within the shelter's administrative wing. The room was stark, devoid of the usual animal-themed art, instead adorned with abstract, cold pieces. "Alara," Eleanor began, her voice deceptively smooth. "I admire your dedication, truly, but your attachment to certain animals, particularly those with behavioral issues, is impeding our progress. Midnight, for instance. He is a liability, a danger to our image. He needs to go." "Midnight is not a danger," Alara stated, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "He is traumatized, and he trusts me." Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though her eyes remained hard. "Trust is a luxury we cannot afford in this business. Alara, we need results, and animals like Midnight, animals who exhibit such aggressive tendencies, reflect poorly on our ability to rehabilitate. You will prepare him for humane termination. I've already put in the request with our new veterinary consultant. It's for the best, for him, and for the shelter's reputation." Alara stared at her, a cold wave of horror washing over her. This was it, the ultimate act of cruelty, masquerading as compassion. This was not about efficiency. This was about power, about eliminating any creature that defied Eleanor's control, any creature that dared to reveal her true nature. She saw a flicker of triumph in Eleanor's eyes, a cold satisfaction at breaking Alara's spirit. "I won't do it," Alara said, her voice shaking slightly but firm. "I will never euthanize an animal for convenience, especially not midnight." Eleanor's smile vanished. Her lips thinned into a hard line. "Then perhaps you are not suited for this role. Elara, perhaps you are too emotionally compromised to make the difficult decisions. I can assure you, the board, now largely comprised of my associates, will agree. You have two choices: comply or leave. And if you leave, I guarantee you, you will never work in animal welfare again. I have considerable influence. Elara, you would be wise not to cross me." Elara felt the weight of the threat, the crushing pressure of Eleanor's power. But beneath the fear, a steel resolve hardened within her. She would not back down. Not when midnight, and countless other vulnerable animals, depended on her. She knew now, with chilling certainty, that she was facing not just an arrogant donor, but a true enemy of the innocent. Her struggle was no longer just for the shelter's soul. It was for the very lives of its most vulnerable inhabitants. The battle lines were drawn. The whisper of whiskers, the hiss of truth, had revealed the serpent in silk. Eleanor Caldwell's threat hung heavy in the air, a chilling pronouncement delivered with the deceptive softness of silk. Elara felt the walls closing in. The heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter, once her sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage, slowly transforming into a gauntlet designed to break her spirit and force her complicity. Eleanor, with her seemingly bottomless pockets and ruthless ambition, tightened her grip, systematically altering the shelter's operations to align with her cold, transactional vision. The streamlining became more aggressive. The adoption criteria were slashed, background checks cursory at best. Animals were pushed out the door at an alarming rate, often to homes that Elara knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, were ill-equipped or, worse, potentially dangerous. Eleanor championed these rapid turnovers in public, citing impressive adoption rates to her wealthy donors and the local media. But behind the scenes, the stories began to surface. A timid terrier returned within days, exhibiting extreme anxiety. A playful kitten found wandering the streets weeks after its adoption. Hushed whispers of animals simply vanishing after leaving the shelter under Eleanor's new, lax protocols. Elara collected these stories, documenting them meticulously in her hidden notebook, each entry a silent scream of injustice. The new wing, still under construction, loomed as a physical manifestation of Eleanor's insidious influence. It wasn't a haven. It was a monument to her ego, designed to impress, not to heal. The existing staff, initially thrilled by the promise of new resources, now walked on eggshells. Many were too afraid to openly challenge Eleanor, fearing for their jobs, their livelihoods. Others, blinded by the sheer scale of her financial contributions, genuinely believed she was a benevolent force, despite the subtle shifts in the shelter's ethos. Elara felt a profound sense of isolation, a stark loneliness in her fight. She was the Cassandra of Heartfelt Haven, seeing the truth no one else wanted to acknowledge. Her only consistent ally was Noah Vance, the investigative journalist, whose initial curiosity had been piqued by Midnight's dramatic outburst, had subtly continued his research into Eleanor Caldwell. He often called Elara, initially under the guise of follow-up questions for his article, but soon, their conversations deepened. He was the only human who seemed to genuinely listen to her growing unease, to the nuances of her observations. "You're telling me she's pushing adoptions without proper vetting?" Noah's voice, calm and professional, came through Elara's phone one late night. "And she's specifically targeting older or difficult animals for disposal. She calls it humane termination for their own good," Elara replied, her voice tight with suppressed fury. "But it's about optics, about clearing cages quickly for the next batch of perfect animals. Midnight is on her list. Noah. She wants him gone." Noah paused, the silence on the line heavy. "That's disturbing, Elara. But it's still largely anecdotal. I need something concrete. Something that links her directly to neglect. Or worse, abuse. Something beyond the cat's reaction. As compelling as it was, Elara understood. Noah was her helper. But he was a journalist, bound by evidence, by facts that could stand up in court or in a public expose. Her intuition, as powerful as it was, wasn't enough. She needed proof, and she had to find it alone. The shelter, her once safe haven, had become her personal gauntlet. Every shift was a delicate dance of subterfuge. She had to navigate Eleanor's increasingly strict rules, her ever-present surveillance, all while covertly investigating. She started spending her nights reviewing the new expedited adoption files, looking for anomalies. She found them addresses that led to empty lots, phone numbers that disconnected, names that couldn't be traced through public records. These were not genuine loving homes. They were black holes where animals vanished. She also began cross-referencing these suspicious adoptions with Eleanor Caldwell's personal calendar, which, in a display of narcissistic transparency, Eleanor often left open on her office desk. Elara noticed a chilling pattern often, within days or weeks of a suspicious adoption. Eleanor would have a scheduled private charity event or a closed-door meeting at a remote, often unmarked, facility owned by one of her many shell corporations. The locations were vague, the purposes even more so. Elara's mind raced, connecting the dots. Could these private events be where the unsuitable animals ended up? The pressure intensified when Eleanor announced the grand finale adoption event, a massive, televised spectacle designed to clear out a significant portion of the shelter's remaining animals before the new wing officially opened. "This is our final push," Eleanor declared at a staff meeting, her smile chillingly bright. "Every animal in this shelter will find a home, and those that don't, well, we will ensure they find their peace. No stragglers for the grand opening." Elara, especially not that old black cat. Her gaze settled on Elara, a clear, unmistakable threat. Elara felt a cold dread. Midnight, and many others, were on the chopping block. She had only 5 days. The clock began to race. Elara, operating on minimal sleep and fueled by an unshakable sense of urgency, became a shadow herself within the shelter. She used her deep knowledge of the building's quirks to her advantage. She knew which cameras had blind spots, which back doors were rarely monitored. She moved like a phantom, collecting data, meticulously scanning documents, and copying files onto a secure flash drive. She even managed to take covert photos of the questionable adoption papers, the vague addresses, the falsified records. One particularly perilous night, she decided she needed more direct evidence. She knew Eleanor kept detailed, confidential files in her private office, locked behind a keypad. Elara had observed Eleanor entering the code numerous times, a sequence of seemingly random numbers, her unique intuitive ability, honed by years of deciphering subtle cues from animals, extended to patterns in human behavior too. She had seen the slight pause, the unconscious flicker of Eleanor's fingers over certain digits. It was a long shot, but she had to try, under the cloak of pre-dawn darkness, with only the distant hum of the building's ventilation system for company. Elara crept towards Eleanor's office. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. She tried the sequence she had intuited. Beep, beep, beep. The red light glowed stubbornly. She tried again, slightly altering the rhythm, the pauses. Beep, 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 click. The soft, almost imperceptible click of the lock disengaging echoed in the silent hallway. A wave of exhilaration and terror washed over her. She slipped inside, moving quickly, silently. The office was opulent, yet sterile, a reflection of Eleanor herself. On the pristine mahogany desk, a series of financial ledgers lay open. Elara's eyes darted across the figures, large, recurring payments to obscure animal research facilities and private rehabilitation centers located in remote, untraceable locations. The payments were disproportionately high for standard animal care, and the names of the facilities rang no bells within the reputable animal welfare community. They were black boxes, just like the adoption addresses. This wasn't charity. This was a complex web of financial deceit, designed to launder money and conceal something far more sinister. Then she found it. Tucked away in a locked drawer, hidden beneath layers of official-looking documents, was a small, unassuming black binder. Ilara's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, neatly organized, were detailed records of every animal deemed unsuitable by Eleanor, marked with chilling annotations: behavioral anomaly, dispatched, elderly, transferred for research, aesthetic flaw, repurposed, and beside each entry, a date and a location. Many of the locations matched the vague addresses on the suspicious adoption papers or the private charity event venues on Eleanor's calendar. Some of the animals Ilara knew personally. Animals that had been adopted quickly under Eleanor's new policies and then mysteriously disappeared. They weren't being adopted into loving homes. They were being repurposed. Ilara felt a wave of icy horror wash over her. It wasn't just neglect. It was calculated cruelty. The phrase transferred for research echoed chillingly in her mind, conjuring images of dark, hidden laboratories, of innocent animals subjected to unimaginable suffering. This was Eleanor Caldwell's true purpose, not philanthropy, but systematic abuse, disguised by a veneer of generosity and public relations. Her $5 million donation was not an act of kindness, but a diversion, a smokescreen to cover her abhorrent activities. She quickly photographed every page of the binder with her phone, the silent clicks echoing loudly in the oppressive stillness of the room. As she was finishing, a faint, almost imperceptible thump echoed from the hallway outside. Ilara froze, her heart leaping into her throat. Someone was there. Had she been followed? Was Eleanor here? She scrambled, returning the binder to its hiding place, rushing to close the desk drawer. She slipped out of the office, carefully locking the keypad behind her, her body pressed against the wall, listening intently. A shadowy figure moved at the far end of the hallway, a flicker of movement in the dim light. It wasn't Eleanor. It was a security guard, making his rounds, his footsteps heavy and slow. She exhaled, a ragged breath escaping her lips. She had been lucky. This time, back in the safety of her office, Ilara reviewed the photos, her hands still shaking. The evidence was damning. She had concrete proof of the disappeared animals, the falsified records, and the chilling financial ties. Now, she needed Noah. He had the platform, the legal knowledge, the ability to amplify her voice and protect her from Eleanor's wrath. She sent a coded message to Noah's encrypted email, a prearranged signal for urgent, sensitive information. "I have it," she typed, her fingers trembling. "Everything. It's worse than we thought. Meet me. Now." The grand finale adoption event was less than 72 hours away. The pressure was immense. Eleanor Caldwell was about to complete her twisted vision, pushing hundreds of animals into unknown fates, cementing her power, and silencing anyone who dared to question her. Ilara, armed with her intuitive understanding of animal suffering and irrefutable proof of Eleanor's depravity, knew this was her last chance. She was fighting not just for Midnight, but for every voiceless creature that had passed through Heartfelt Haven, and for the very soul of the shelter itself. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, a public battle between pure evil and quiet, unwavering compassion. The air in the grand hall of Heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter crackled with a manufactured excitement on Grand Finale Adoption Day. Banners proclaiming, "Forever Homes Await," and "A New Beginning," hung from the rafters, attempting to mask the grim reality that churned beneath the surface. Eleanor Caldwell, a vision in a shimmering silver gown that reflected the stage lights, moved with the regal confidence of a monarch. Her laughter, tinkling and false, echoed through the cavernous space as she greeted local television crews, prominent donors, and families eager for a quick adoption. She was at the apex of her public persona, basking in the glow of carefully cultivated philanthropy. But in the quiet corners of the shelter, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Alara, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, moved like a phantom, her eyes scanning the faces in the crowd. She clutched her discreetly hidden flash drive, its contents a digital key to Eleanor's dark secrets. Midnight, sensing the escalating drama and Eleanor's pervasive presence, was a trembling ball of black fur, hidden deep within a carrier near Alara's feet. His low, continuous growl was a barely audible tremor that only Alara could truly feel, a constant, primal warning. Noah Vance, dressed in a simple, unobtrusive suit, stood near the media section, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, a large digital projector concealed within. His gaze was fixed on Alara, a silent acknowledgement of their desperate, coordinated plan. He had received Alara's coded message, the urgency in her voice relayed through a series of prearranged phrases, and had spent the last 48 hours independently verifying the damning information she had uncovered. The scope of Eleanor's depravity had sickened him, solidifying his resolve to expose her. Eleanor Caldwell took the stage, the spotlight finding her with practiced ease. She began her speech, a soaring monologue about compassion, second chances, and the glorious future of Heartfelt Haven under her benevolent guidance. Her voice, smooth as silk, filled the hall, painting a saccharine picture of animal welfare. "Today," Eleanor announced, her arms sweeping dramatically, "we celebrate lives saved, futures brightened, and a testament to what true generosity can achieve." She smiled, her eyes glittering. "We believe every animal deserves a loving home, and thanks to the incredible support of our community, hundreds of precious lives are finding their forever families right here, right now." As Eleanor's voice swelled, a low, guttural hiss erupted from the carrier at Alara's feet. Midnight. He was agitated, sensing Eleanor's proximity, his entire body vibrating with an ancient, deeply rooted fear. Alara knelt, whispering soothing words, trying to calm him. But it was clear the old cat was beyond mere comfort. He remembered. He knew. Alara took a deep, shuddering breath. This was it, the moment of truth. She stood, pulling the carrier open. Midnight, instead of darting away, launched himself out, not towards the crowd, but directly onto Alara's shoulder, clinging there, his claws digging gently into her uniform. His gaze, luminous and full of a profound, primal loathing, was fixed on Eleanor Caldwell. And then, he hissed, a long, drawn-out, furious sound that cut through the polite applause, echoing through the hall like a raw, ancient cry. It was louder this time, more desperate, utterly undeniable. Eleanor's speech faltered, her smile freezing mid-air. The crowd murmured, confused. Some laughed nervously, attributing it to a feisty shelter cat. But then, Alara began to walk, slowly, deliberately. She strode towards the stage, Midnight perched on her shoulder, his eyes blazing, his hissing unwavering. "Excuse me, Ms. Caldwell." Alara's voice, quiet but piercing, cut through the speaker system, magnified by a stray microphone she picked up from a table. She stood directly in front of the stage, looking up at Eleanor, her eyes burning with a quiet, righteous fury. "Before we celebrate these forever homes, I believe there are some other forever homes we need to discuss. The ones that disappeared. The ones that found a different kind of ending." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of cold rage passing through them. "Alara, what is the meaning of this? You are disrupting a charity event. This is highly inappropriate." "Inappropriate," Alara retorted, her voice gaining strength, echoing through the speakers. "What's inappropriate is using the facade of charity to inflict suffering. What's inappropriate is hiding behind donations while innocent animals vanish." She raised her voice, letting the emotion swell. "This cat, Midnight," she said, gently stroking the trembling feline. "He knows. He remembers. He hisses at you. Ms. Caldwell, because he sees the monster beneath the silk. He sees the shadow of the hands that have brought untold pain to so many like him." She paused, taking a moment to look at the bewildered faces in the audience. "Many of the animals adopted through your fast-track program," Elara continued, her voice heavy with grief and accusation, "were never truly adopted. They vanished. They were repurposed. And Midnight's fear, his primal hiss, is a voice for all of them. A voice for the quiet screams in the dark." The crowd stirred, a wave of confusion and suspicion rippling through them. Eleanor, her face hardening, attempted to regain control. "This is slander delusions. This woman is unstable. She's too emotionally attached to these animals. Take her away." She gestured frantically to a burly security guard she had personally hired, who began to move towards Elara. But before the guard could reach her, Noah Vance sprang into action. With a practiced swiftness, he plugged his projector into a hidden outlet near the back wall, and a series of images flashed onto the large screen behind Eleanor. The first image was a high-resolution scan of Eleanor Caldwell's private ledger, showing recurring payments to obscure, controversial animal research facilities. Then, a satellite image, clear and damning, showing Eleanor's distinctive luxury car parked outside a remote, unmarked warehouse. Next, a photo of a missing adopted dog from Heartfelt Haven, its adoption papers marked "Found Home," followed by a blurry image from a hidden camera, showing the same dog being led into the very same warehouse. The crowd gasped. The murmurs turned into shouts. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Noah's voice, amplified by his own portable microphone, cut through the din. "Ms. Caldwell, these are not reputable research facilities. These are facilities known for illegal animal testing, for horrific abuse, for turning animals into commodities for illicit profit." Eleanor Caldwell, her face now completely drained of color, turned to the screen, her eyes wide with unmasked panic. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to droop. Her shimmering gown suddenly looked cheap, garish. She tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped her lips. The image of her car, the ledger, the terrified animals. It was all there, undeniable. The cold, calculating monster was finally exposed. "And it's not just the animals from this shelter," Elara continued, her voice rising to a crescendo, her gaze fixed on Eleanor. "Midnight was found abandoned years ago, bearing the scars of abuse that no one could explain. He was one of your victims, wasn't he, Ms. Caldwell? His history, buried in fragmented reports, links to a notorious string of animal abuse cases across the state. Cases that coincidentally ceased around the time you began your philanthropic work here." Elara looked directly at Midnight, gently stroking his head. "He remembers the cruelty. He remembers you." As Elara spoke these words, Midnight, clinging to her shoulder, let out a final piercing shriek, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror and rage directed squarely at Eleanor. It was a sound that seemed to transcend the physical, carrying the collective agony of every animal Eleanor had harmed. It was a witness's cry. Eleanor Caldwell, overwhelmed by the damning evidence and Midnight's terrifying, visceral accusation, let out a strangled cry. Her knees buckled. She stumbled backward, clutching at the air, her face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated fear and defeat. The perfect facade shattered, revealing the truly monstrous emptiness beneath. The security guard, who had been moving towards Elara, now stood frozen, staring at the screen, then at Eleanor, then back at the exposed evidence, his face pale with horror. The crowd, which had started in polite interest, then moved to confused murmurs, was now consumed by a righteous, boiling rage. Donors, their faces etched with disgust, began to back away from Eleanor, Families who had been on the verge of adopting animals gasped in horror, clutching their children closer. A woman in the front row burst into tears. The room exploded into a cacophony of shouts. "Animal abuser! Monster! Arrest her!" Eleanor Vance, the detective who had once dismissed Alara's crazy theories, was among the attendees, having come to support the shelter's public event. She had been observing the escalating drama with growing alarm. Now, as the damning images flashed across the screen and Eleanor Caldwell crumbled, Eleanor Vance stepped forward, her face grim. She pulled out her police badge, holding it high. "Eleanor Caldwell," she announced, her voice cutting through the din, clear and authoritative. "You are under arrest for suspicion of systematic animal abuse, fraud, and operating an unregistered animal research facility." She turned to the uniformed officers who had been providing security for the event, their faces reflecting the same shock and outrage as the crowd. "Take her into custody. Secure the premises." The officers, galvanized, moved swiftly. They took Eleanor Caldwell, who offered no resistance, her spirit utterly broken, her eyes wide and vacant with terror. As she was led away, the crowd parted, their faces a mixture of disgust and fervent relief. Alara stood, midnight still on her shoulder, surrounded by the swirling chaos, but feeling an immense, profound sense of vindication. The truth, long whispered by whiskers and unseen by human eyes, had finally roared. The crowd, initially seeing her as an eccentric, unstable employee, now looked at her with awe, with profound respect. They saw not a quirky animal lover, but a courageous hero, a quiet sentinel who had listened to the voiceless and brought a monster to justice. The applause that slowly, tentatively, began to ripple through the hall was not for Eleanor Caldwell's false generosity, but for Alara Vance's unwavering courage, a testament to the power of truth and the quiet strength of compassion. The reverberations of Eleanor Caldwell's arrest shook Seattle's elite circles like an earthquake. The headlines screamed of her betrayal, painting a stark picture of the manipulative socialite who had used animal welfare as a shield for her depraved activities. The $5 million pledge, once a symbol of generosity, was now revealed as a smokescreen, part of a sprawling network of financial fraud and systemic animal abuse. The animal research facilities were raided, revealing horrific conditions and a chilling trail of suffering. Rescued animals, traumatized and frail, were slowly brought to Heartfelt Haven and other ethical shelters, each a silent testament to Eleanor's cruelty. The public outcry was immense, a wave of collective outrage that demanded justice. Eleanor Caldwell, stripped of her carefully constructed facade, faced a swift and merciless legal battle. The evidence Eris and Noah had uncovered, coupled with the testimony of former employees and forensic veterinarians, was irrefutable. She lost her social standing, her vast fortune, and ultimately, her freedom. The courts, responding to the overwhelming public pressure and the undeniable cruelty of her crimes, handed down a severe sentence, a lengthy prison term, a fitting end for a Type A villain whose ambition and greed had consumed her. She would spend her days stripped of the silk and diamonds, facing the cold, hard walls of a federal penitentiary. In the days that followed, Heartfelt Haven, animal shelter, became a focal point of public sympathy and support. Donations poured in, genuine contributions from people who truly cared. Volunteers, inspired by Alara's courage, offered their time and expertise. The atmosphere within the shelter, once tinged with the unspoken anxiety of Eleanor Caldwell's presence, now breathed a sigh of relief, a collective exhale of profound peace. The animals, sensing the shift, seemed calmer, their eyes softer, their purrs more frequent. Detective Eleanor Vance, who had personally overseen Caldwell's arrest and the subsequent raids, was among the first to acknowledge the profound shift. She visited Alara in the still reverberating quiet of the shelter, the chaos of the outside world momentarily subdued. Her face, though still tired, held a different expression, now one of genuine respect and a newfound humility. "Alara," she began, her voice softer than Alara had ever heard it. I want to apologize again. Publicly. If I have to. I was wrong. Terribly wrong about you. About your methods. And because of my arrogance. David Miller's death almost went unpunished, and countless animals continued to suffer. She looked directly at Alara, her gaze unflinching. You saw what we, with all our training and experience, failed to see. You heard what no one else would listen to. Alara, now used to the unexpected influx of attention, merely nodded. It was the animals. Detective Vance. They told me. They certainly did, Eleanor Vance replied, a faint, almost bewildered smile touching her lips. And you listened. That's a rare gift. Alara, one that this department and this city desperately needs. She paused, her expression becoming more formal, more purposeful. The board of directors, with my strong recommendation and the unanimous support of the shelter staff, has voted Alara Vance. We would be honored if you would accept the position of director of Heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter. The offer was profound, a culmination of everything Alara had tirelessly worked for. It wasn't just a job title. It was a mandate, a complete transfer of power. She would have full autonomy to rebuild and manage the shelter according to her own vision, a true sanctuary, a place of healing and genuine rehabilitation, where the welfare of every animal was paramount, not just their adoptability. It was a mission, a calling, a chance to right the wrongs of the past and build a future rooted in pure compassion. She would reshape its policies, prioritize long-term care over quick turnovers, and ensure thorough vetting for every adoption. This was her chance to create the haven she had always envisioned. I accept, Alara said, her voice steady, a quiet determination shining in her eyes. On one condition, that we implement rigorous oversight, that every animal's journey is meticulously documented, and that we partner closely with investigative journalists and law enforcement to ensure this kind of abuse never happens again. Eleanor Vance nodded firmly. Agreed. Wholeheartedly. She extended a hand, and Alara shook it, a silent pact forged between two women who, despite their different paths, now shared a common purpose: justice and protection for the vulnerable. The Type B character, the one who had once misunderstood and doubted, had not only recognized her error, but had actively sought to rectify it, becoming a staunch ally and advocate. One quiet evening, a few weeks into her new role, Alara found herself in her new office, which was larger, brighter, and adorned with cheerful animal-themed artwork. The construction on the new wing had been halted, its plans being completely revised to focus on therapeutic spaces and specialized care units, rather than just rapid intake. The air was filled with a sense of hopeful renewal. Midnight, no longer a furtive shadow, slept peacefully on a soft blanket draped over her office chair, his gentle snores a comforting rhythm. Noah Vance arrived, bearing 2 steaming mugs of herbal tea. He found Alara sitting by the window, watching the soft twilight descend over the revitalized shelter grounds. He sat opposite her, the comfortable silence between them a testament to their shared journey. It's incredible, Alara, Noah said, gazing out at the peaceful scene. What you've done, what you're building here. Alara smiled faintly. It's what needed to be done, Noah, and I couldn't have done it without you. Your willingness to listen, to believe, to act. You gave voice to what Midnight, and so many others, were trying to tell me. Noah took a sip of his tea. I just followed the evidence. Alara, you found it. You were the one brave enough to put yourself on the line, to stand up to someone as powerful as Eleanor Caldwell. You saw through her. The moment Midnight started hissing, I knew there was something more. But you understood why. He paused, looking at her with genuine awe. That connection you have with them. It's truly remarkable. Almost supernatural. Alara looked down at Midnight, gently stroking his soft fur. It's not supernatural, Noah. It's listening. really listening, to their fear, their pain, their memories, and my own past helped with that. Losing Snowball and Rusty, not knowing what happened to them, it left a wound, a need to protect, and it taught me to pay attention to the silent screams, the unseen wounds. She looked up, her gaze meeting his. This entire journey, it's been a gauntlet, but it's also been a revelation. It forced me to face my fears, to step out of my quiet corner, and to fight for what I believe in. And I learned that the greatest strength isn't always the loudest voice, but the clearest one, the one that speaks for those who can't. Noah nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. Indeed. And now, Heartfelt Haven truly lives up to its name. A haven, and full of heart. He smiled. What's next for the director of Heartfelt Haven? Alara looked out at the darkening sky, a new determination in her eyes. We heal. Noah. We rebuild. And then, we expand. We take this model of ethical care and investigation nationwide, because there are so many more animals out there, waiting for someone to listen to their whispers, waiting for their voices to be heard. The shelter, once a place of quiet solitude for Alara, was now a vibrant center of purpose and hope. The weight of responsibility was immense, but it was a burden she carried with grace and an unwavering resolve. She had found her true calling, not just in caring for animals, but in advocating for them, in becoming their fiercest champion. The new calm that settled over Heartfelt Haven was not merely an absence of chaos. It was the profound peace born of justice, healing, and a renewed promise to protect the innocent. 2 years later, the Heartfelt Haven Animal Shelter was no longer just a local sanctuary in suburban Seattle. It had become a national model for ethical animal welfare. Its reputation, once tied to a quiet, devoted staff, now soared on the wings of Dr. Alara Vance's leadership and her revolutionary approach to animal care and protection. The initial $5 million pledge from Eleanor Caldwell, now long gone and replaced by genuine, transparent fundraising, had been channeled into a truly state-of-the-art facility. The new wing, originally designed for rapid turnover, had been transformed into specialized rehabilitation suites, offering advanced veterinary care, behavioral therapy rooms, and tranquil sensory gardens designed to soothe traumatized animals. The building hummed with positive energy, a vibrant contrast to the sterile quiet that once dominated its halls. Alara, now firmly established as a respected leader in the animal advocacy community, was no longer a shadow in the background. Her presence was understated yet powerful. She commanded respect not with a booming voice or aggressive tactics, but with her quiet competence, her unwavering integrity, and her profound, almost mystical, understanding of the creatures she championed. She frequently delivered keynote speeches at national animal welfare conferences. Her insights into animal psychology and trauma rehabilitation, transforming conventional approaches. She was often invited to consult with other shelters across the country, sharing Heartfelt Haven's groundbreaking protocols for ethical adoption and comprehensive intake procedures. She was the face of a new movement, a testament to the power of quiet conviction. Her office, now adorned with vibrant, impressionistic paintings of animals and bathed in natural light from expansive windows, reflected her inner peace. The original framed photo of David Miller, whose sacrifice had inadvertently set her on this path, remained a cherished centerpiece on her desk, a reminder of the quiet detective who had championed another silent truth-teller, Izzy Garcia. Now the undisputed chief operations officer of Heartfelt Haven was a force of nature. Her youthful enthusiasm, sharpened by years of intense learning and partnership with Alara, had blossomed into formidable organizational and strategic skills. She managed the shelter's sprawling operations with effortless grace, juggling budgets, overseeing staff training, and coordinating outreach programs. She was the perfect complement to Alara's visionary leadership, translating Alara's intuitive insights into tangible, efficient programs. One crisp autumn morning, Alara and Izzy reviewed the latest statistics. Our adoption success rate is at an all-time high, Chief, Izzy announced, her eyes sparkling, and our return rate is practically negligible. The new pre-adoption counseling program is working wonders. People are genuinely ready for these animals. That's because we're focusing on matching the right animal with the right human, not just moving numbers. Ilara replied, a rare, contented smile on her face. And because we're healing them first, giving them time, giving them trust. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on expansion plans, a new mobile veterinary unit they were launching for underserved communities, and the upcoming Heartfelt Heroes Gala, a genuine celebration of animal resilience and human compassion, utterly devoid of the superficiality of Eleanor Caldwell's past events. But Ilara's dedication extended far beyond the operational success of Heartfelt Haven. The lingering pain from her own past, the mysterious disappearances of Snowball and Rusty, had transmuted into a powerful drive to ensure no other animal suffered in silence. She had, with Noah Vance's invaluable assistance, established the Silent Voices Investigative Fund. This national fund was dedicated to uncovering and prosecuting cases of systematic animal abuse, particularly those hidden behind facades of legitimate organizations. The fund employed a small team of seasoned investigators, including retired law enforcement officers and forensic veterinarians, but its core methodology was rooted in Ilara's unique intuitive approach. She held regular training workshops for these investigators, teaching them not just about evidence collection and legal procedures, but about listening to the animals. She taught them to recognize the subtle behavioral cues, the almost imperceptible signs of past trauma, the patterns of fear or aggression that could signal a history of abuse. She emphasized the importance of empathy, of spending time quietly observing, of trusting their gut feelings when an animal reacted unusually to a specific person or environment. It was her way of passing on her extraordinary talent, cultivating a new generation of animal defenders who could read the unspoken narratives of their voiceless clients. Just last month, the Silent Voices Investigative Fund had achieved a major victory: the dismantling of an underground dogfighting ring in rural Tennessee, a complex operation that had evaded law enforcement for years. It was Ilara's insistence on investigating seemingly minor anomalies in local animal shelter intake data, coupled with her teaching of how to identify the particular whispers of despair in abused fighting dogs, that led Noah's team to the perpetrators. Her unique blend of intuition and meticulous observation had once again proven to be an unparalleled investigative tool. Ilara had also fulfilled a long-held dream. She had written a book, titled The Whispers of Whiskers, Listening to the Unspoken Language of Animals. It wasn't a scientific treatise, but a heartfelt memoir intertwining her personal journey with practical advice for understanding animal behavior, empathy, and advocacy. The book had become an unexpected bestseller, touching the hearts of thousands across the country, inspiring countless individuals to look at their pets, and indeed all animals, with new eyes and a deeper understanding. It emphasized that animals, like humans, have complex emotional lives and memories, and that their seemingly irrational reactions often hold profound truths. One tranquil late afternoon, as the setting sun cast long, golden shadows across the now bustling cat lounge at Heartfelt Haven, Ilara found herself sitting on a plush cat tree, observing the contented sprawl of felines around her. The lounge was a vibrant space, filled with climbing structures, cozy beds, and an abundance of toys. Kittens chased laser pointers. Adult cats napped in sunbeams, and the air was filled with soft purrs and contented sighs. Midnight, no longer the terrified, reclusive shadow, was curled peacefully on her lap, a warm, purring weight. His black fur, once scruffy and matted, was now sleek and glossy. His eyes, once haunted by fear, were soft and trusting, occasionally opening to blink slowly at her, a gesture of profound affection. He had found his ultimate peace, his deep-seated trauma finally healed by years of unwavering love and security. He was Ilara's most loyal companion, the silent catalyst of her extraordinary journey. Ilara gently stroked Midnight's soft fur, feeling the rhythmic vibration of his purr beneath her fingers. She looked out the window, watching a flock of birds take flight against the twilight sky. The fear of her past, the specter of Snowball and Rusty's disappearances, no longer haunted her. Instead, it had become the fuel for her purpose. She was no longer powerless. She was a protector, a voice for the voiceless. Her eyes, filled with a serene calm, looked towards the horizon, towards a future where the whispers of whiskers would never again be ignored, where every animal, no matter how small or how traumatized, would find its champion, its haven, and its unwavering light. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.